Hey everybody, I'm Jonathan Blanchard. I'm going to be a senior over at Bama, graduating with a bachelor's in aerospace engineering in May, hopefully with a minor in mechanical. And I got the opportunity to work over at Airbus this summer in the environmental health and safety department with my mentor, David Rogers, and a little bit of the process goes like this. So I worked on policies, forms, and PowerPoints was my main scope. Some of them were already had a creation, and I had to revise, and some start from scratch. With the help of the APC, basically I would write up the document or correct the document, send it over to Tom Morgan, and Justin would help out. And another man I'd like to point out, JW, helped me out a lot this summer, JW Redmond. And then it would go to David. And so basically, how I would work it was David had example policies from the past. There are example policies from the APC to help out resources, things like that. And then, I would look at online and try to find different ways to go about formatting everything, and then basically reach out to employees at the facility for guidance and requirements, go to different departments and see what we needed specifically that I could pull from the standards that would help us out. Comply with OSHA standards, and not only OSHA, but NFPA, ANSI requirements. I really got an opportunity to learn to look at all these different resources and compile them together in one document that fit the scope of what we needed over at Airbus. So that was a really exciting thing. Here's topics that I'm going to go over that I worked on this summer. So here's HazCom, chemical management. Here are some pipes and media downstairs that contain SkyDroll, and we like to point out the directions that they're going in, even though not necessarily did OSHA require it. Here it kind of points out a situation about warning your employees about unlabeled pipes, but we would rather label them, so some things we would exceed the expectations of OSHA, things like that. New chemical approval form was something that I worked on. When a new chemical would come in, you wanted to make sure that you knew where it was coming from, what kind of container it comes in. If we transferred it to a new container, what are the labeling requirements that go along with that sort of thing. And then storage of chemicals was a big part of chemical management, different type of flammable storage cabinets, things of that nature, different requirements for that you'd have to look at. And then, so here, talk about a little bit about fall protection and ladder policies. These two ladders are jigs ladders outside the gauging canopy that I talked a little bit to some of our contractors, to figure out who was responsible for doing inspections, things like that. They pointed out that they do the inspections on the bigger, more specific ladders like this, and then the general everyday use ladders that we have in the FAL, or the final assembly line. Over there, are things that we have to look for, different inspection items. So, carry and use, making sure that we specify you should use 3 points of contact when you're walking up the ladder, or, make sure you use the specific storage areas for the ladders that we have. Personal fall protection was another part of this process that I worked with. Wing grips are a specific item of fall protection that we use. On top of wing structures, you have it's like a suction cup kind of deal that helps you, stay up on top of the wing. Kind of an innovative idea. And then annual PFAS inspection form is something that I worked on for things like harnesses and things like that to inspect, yearly instead of just the daily inspection that employees go through to inspect for, warping, or if there's any discoloration from heat or things like that, or fraying and the material. And then hierarchy of controls is just basically trying to get to a situation where we don't have to use fall protection less and less, so it's just safe as it is, engineering controls, administrative controls, things like that. And then moving on to PPE, here's one of our PPE machines we have in the FAL. You bring out with your swipe card, you can get your basic PPE that you would need for, things like these items that I have listed here. Worked on a PPE hazard assessment form. You'd walk around and kind of inspect to see what types of PPE you might need for different hazardous situations. that you might encounter. I did a lot of walking over the tool shop, who carries a lot of our items, to see what they carried, so I could put in the document, hey, this is where you go if you wanted a bump cap or a hard hat or something like that, or different types of gloves, that kind of situation. I wanted to mention the prescription glasses program was something that Airbus offers that's not necessarily you needed to be compliant with the standard, but something that you could get prescription safety glasses, kind of something that we offer. So you want to mention in the policy, mention in the training, so that the employees know about it in the first place. But yeah, so Lockout Tagout was another situation that I worked out on, and there's a lot going on, so I just kind of gave an example of something that I worked on with that removal isolation device report. Basically, if somebody's not there that day and they leave their tag on, what to do. Basically, make sure the person's not there. Make all reasonable effort to contact the employee, and then, when he comes back, make sure that they know everything's back to normal. And then, basically, other things with Lockout Tagout, we're developing procedures for entry isolation. So, things like for each different item, looking for isolation points, making sure an authorized person is on the job, making sure everybody knows what the situation is so nobody gets hurt, locking it out, turning it off, fixing it, unlocking it, turning it back on, that sort of thing. And then there was one situation where a vendor was contacting us about providing, Lockout Tagout service for us, and David, told me to give him a call, and I talked to him for a while about our options, because there are a couple companies out there that do this specific service because it is something that you want someone special to work on, because it is an important process. But yeah, so moving on, I worked on electrical safe work. Here I mentioned an NFPA standard requirement. It talks about risk assessments, and it talks about determining appropriate safety-related work practices, the arc flash boundary, and PPE to be used within the arc flash boundary. I think this is, yeah, and so it talks about here, this is in our logistics center, our warning sign. Arc flashes, you have the boundary here, and then, the PPE necessary, and that sort of thing. And then in this situation, I reference NFPA and OSHA standards because those are both very important for electrical. And then I worked on another energized electrical work evaluation form, which basically similar to the arc flash risk assessment, but it's risk assessment for more general electrical processes in the FAL. And then just discuss electrically safe work condition, a condition where you make sure everything is turned off and locked out, and it's a safe condition that we wanted to stress to make sure that we keep everything definitely safe and not just me. Hex chrome is a situation that we're lucky to say that we don't test for these type of levels in the FAL, and we stay below the action level. And here I kind of have mentioned a form that I worked on that kind of you would walk around and see, well, what types of situations might involve hexavalent chromium exposure, and that would be an area to test more so. And so, if we did find something like that, we would do testing and make sure that everything's okay in that area. And then I pointed out medical examinations are performed by the OHG, the hospital where our employees go if there's a situation that happens to them. Because I was working on medical examination forms, and Dave was like, well, we don't do that. The hospital would, check them out for us, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But moving on, fire prevention and protection, Here are some suppression systems that I worked with the facilities department to get, in different areas of the FAL, what type of media goes along with it. For instance, in the final phase flight line, agent canopy, we have low expansion foam, which I really didn't know what that was before I started interning, but quickly figured out that it's a type of foam that suppresses fire, the oxygen out of the fire. And not only do we have these types of media, we don't just have water in the final assembly line, this is just the plump situation, but we have lots of different types of fire suppression systems, like fire extinguishers, and talk about fire extinguishers, class A through D and K for different types of fires, like if it's a combustible dust fire, or for instance, if it's a flammable liquid, it'd be a different type of fire suppression system for that sort of thing. Talk about emergencies, which is a lot of what the security team handles over at Airbus, so communicating with them to make sure we're covering the proper emergency procedures, and then this, policy in particular reference a lot of other things like hot work and combustible dust and electrical that have their own fire prevention protection plans in place. So, and then moved on to DOT, Hazmat, Department of Transportation, hazardous materials. Here I just have an example of outside in one of our hazardous waste storage and miscellaneous signal here for hazardous waste, and this is kind of what it's supposed to look like in the standard, kind of it points out. But you want to make sure that as far as miscellaneous waste goes, that everything is compliant with each other, I guess. I don't know how to say. I guess the hazardous material is okay to be next to each other, it doesn't cause something. But and then so most of my information for this as standard came from the OSHA DOT standard, and then talk a little bit about labeling requirements. Like how many sides do you need to put the label on, or if a label needs to go on outside of the truck or just on the package, or paperwork requirements for the manifests, like what's supposed to be in the manifest, who's supposed to sign it, and that sort of thing, packaging and shipping, like different types of amount of force that packages are supposed to take, like drop tests that you're supposed to do, and things like temperature inside of the truck. It even goes as in depth as that. And then a big aspect of the DOT was our contractor waste management helped me out a lot. I walked over kind of with like a list of chemicals from the standard and was just like, hey, Will, I don't want to like meet the requirements for all these, like, can you go through? And he just like went through and kind of checked off which ones I should be concerned with that we have. So that was really nice. Moving on, machine guarding, something that I worked with. These are some specific requirements for grinders. So like basically work rests within 1/8 inch of the wheel, and then the adjustable tongue guard up here within 1/4 inch. And then inspection requirements. A lot of that was done through one of our contractors but they kind of wanted to have like a general form, so I wrote up a general form for employees in case supplementing their daily visual inspection, they wanted to do a more in-depth inspection. And then just pointing out most guards are in the machine shops and the working shop in the FAL. So moving on, hot work. Here's a hot work permit form that I helped write up. And this basically says that we need a hot work permit form in the standard pretty much. And basically points out things like equipment to be used, flammable gas testing, firework, safety precautions, things that you want to make a note of. And the area inspection before use, you want to keep a 35 foot boundary from your flammables, cover your flammables, things like that, and make sure that you have a fire watch at all times, because we don't at the Airbus have a designated hot work area, so we like to keep that because hot work doesn't go on a whole lot, so we make sure we're checking it out whenever it does happen, that sort of thing. So, and then combustible dust, another thing that I worked on. Here's a drafting table, that keeps dust clouds from getting away, sucking in the dust into a water area that kind of makes it hazardous, so keeps that at bay. And then here's kind of from the standard NFPA 654, just specifics about volume flow rates of draft tables or things like that, basically saying, each collection point shall be designed so as to convey and control the collected dust. So basically like do what it's supposed to do kind of thing. But so basically at the FAL we mainly have aluminum and wood dust from, grinding on aluminum, aircraft parts and things like that, making wooden structures in the wood shops. And then here I've written allowed dust collection vacuums, cleanup methods, fire extinguishing methods that go along with combustible dust we thought were important to point out. So yeah, basically I just enjoyed being out at the FAL and being able to walk around, hang out with the engineers, making some great connections over there that I'm sure will help me in my career in the future. And yeah, I just really like to thank everybody, David and everybody at the APC and at Airbus for this opportunity. It was a really great one, so I appreciate it.